Okay, so I'm going to tell you about ELT Playbook 1. This is an ebook that I've just self-published. I published it on Valentine's Day to make it nice and easy to remember the date. And the slide that you can see at the moment is the cover of the book. It's something that I'd been working on for about a year as an ebook, and for about 2 or 3 years before that as an idea, before I worked out that an ebook was the way to go. It's a task book that this particular one is designed for new teachers, but it could also be used by trainers or managers to help out new teachers. And it's a series of tasks for teachers to work through. And Anya was just mentioning that if you've only done a 4-week qualification, or even less, because many people in many countries, they've done a weekend online course, or they've just turned up and they're in the classroom. There are a lot of methodology books around, but there's not very much out there that's relevant to any context. And that's what I'm hoping my ELT Playbook series will be. It's designed to help teachers, this particular one, to help new teachers to deal with typical problems that they have in the classroom, and to learn to reflect on their teaching, because that's where I think the real learning actually happens. And as Magdalena was saying, that opportunities happen when you network. It's also designed to be a way into creating an online community for yourself if you want it. Excuse me, sorry. So I am a CELTA trainer, and one of the things that I noticed is that we would send people off at the end of CELTA, and then they didn't really have any more training if they ended up freelancing, or if they ended up in a school that didn't have a lot of support. And so the idea behind the book is to help those people particularly. So the icons that you're going to see on the next few slides, those are the icons that are used within ELT Playbook to guide readers, to help them to understand which section they're up to. So I mentioned before that you have 30 tasks. So this is the icon for a task. And the 30 tasks are divided into 6 sections. So those sections are back to basics. So that's kind of basic classroom management, for example. Examining language, learning about grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, thinking about your students' language as well. Upgrading skills, so obviously reading, writing, listening, speaking. Being creative, I'm going to give you an example of one of the tasks from there later. Exploring your context, so finding out a little bit more about where you fit in. So especially new teachers, you can feel like you're very much in a bubble. So the exploring your context is to help you to see a bit more of the wider picture. And then very importantly, the last section is teacher health and well-being. This is something that Sarah Mercer's particularly been talking about, and a lot of people have mentioned this already, that 1/6 of my book is dedicated to teacher health and well-being. I'm going to talk to you today, or I'm going to give you some examples of tasks from 3 different sections. The tasks cover things that teachers can do in class when they're thinking about classes, and that aren't related to classes at all, but are connected to kind of the whole person, or the whole experience of being a new teacher. So the task for in class is about using the board, and the actual task that you would see in the book is very, very short. Take 5 photos of your board during lessons this week. They can all be taken during the same lesson or in different lessons. That's the task, that's it. Another example from the being creative section, this task is called using the space. So this one is about class, not actually in the class. Draw a sketch of the classroom space or spaces that you typically teach in, including, for example, furniture, doors, windows, and the board or boards. Okay, so again, very short task. Oops, sorry, I moved you down a little bit. And then the last one, this one is a little bit longer, but this one is about exploring your context. It's called the people around us. So you have, as the task, think of as many names as possible for each of the following categories. Don't worry if some of the categories are empty. So people who I can. Ask about grammar, vocabulary, English usage. Show my plans, materials, activity ideas to in order to get feedback. Ask about teaching and methodology. Invite into my classroom to observe my lesson or speak to my students. Pour out my worries to, and have a laugh with. So we've got these 3 different tasks, just as examples. As I say, there are 30 in the whole book. Once they've had the task, the next icon they'll see is the time. All of the tasks in total, from the task and the reflection, shouldn't take more than 2 hours, and most of them shouldn't take more than an hour. So they're designed to fit in around all of our very busy lives. Once you've got the time and the task, the next thing are some reflection questions. And for me, this is the key thing in the book. Very often I find in methodology books you have tasks, but they don't necessarily get you to think about your own context. So for example, taking the board task that I mentioned before. So you've got your 5 photos of the board. Here are 2 or 3 of the questions. Can you remember what was happening around the time in the lesson when you took each photo? What colours have you used? Are they easy to see and differentiate for all students, including those who may be colourblind? Do you think the information on the board was useful to your students? Do you think you paid enough attention to organising it? Or here are some of the questions from using the space. In a typical lesson, where are the students and where's the teacher? Who moves, when, why, how often, and how do these moves or lack of them benefit the students? What are 3 ways you use or could use your classroom space other than your default setup? And are there any activities you find it difficult to set up because of restrictions in your classroom space? And then the people around us, examples of questions. How often do you actually go to the people you identified for these reasons? How do you feel about asking for help, and what might be the reasons for this? Are there any people you'd like to have more contact with in these areas? And do you think other people would put you into any of these categories? Would you like your name to appear in more of these categories? And how can you achieve this? So the questions are designed to really get people thinking. And then after the questions, there are 4 different options. So there are 4 different icons. Once people have thought about the task and the questions, they can choose whether they would like to write a blog post. They can choose whether they would like to do a video or audio recording. They could choose to have a photo, and this is like an Instagram style post. So those are all very social media based. But if people want to just think about it for themselves, there's also an option for a journal task. All of the task options are pretty interchangeable, but they're just suggestions. And so this is also for people, if anyone's thinking, for example, I'd like to start a blog, but I don't know what to write about, or I want to have a YouTube channel and I don't know what to put on there, then these are possible ideas. So again, here are the ideas for each of the areas that I mentioned. So for using the board, draw a revised board plan showing how you could improve the use of the board at one of the points you captured during the week. This is the icon for the journals, by the way. Using the space, describe what a visitor would see if they entered your classroom and what impression they might get of the space. Or for the people around us, write about who you go to for support and who you don't go to and why. So this is the journal one, so it's a little bit more private. And then the more public ones. So for a blog, for example, tell us your top 3 tips for using the board. Choose 3 different, for classroom space, choose 3 different ways to use your classroom space and list the pros and cons of each of them. And then for the people around us, describe which categories you think you'd appear in other people's lists. Explain why and say whether and how you'd like to develop yourself so that your name pops up in other categories. So you can see that the tasks come directly out of the reflection questions in each case. So then the video idea, or the audio idea, use the ELT Playbook hashtag, which I'll talk more about in a second, to share what you learned about your use of the board when you did the task. So what did you learn from taking the photos? Or with the video, with the classroom space, take us on a tour of your classroom space using the hashtag. Tell us what you particularly like and what the main challenges of working in the space are. Don't forget to check with the owners first and to get permission if you show the faces of any students. So those are the points in the book that they also show you how to get permission and how to make sure that everything you're doing is ethical. Or for the people around us, talk about a time you've had a positive experience when asking for support and what made it positive. I'm just going to share one example of an Instagram post. For using the board, you could use the ELT whiteboard hashtag on Twitter and choose 2 ideas from other people's boards that you could use and put one of your photos there if you want to. Or for, that's the last one. So any of these ideas people can share on the ELT Playbook hashtag on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. And the idea is that people can start to build up a community and get support from people outside their local context. It's also, people can share their tasks or share their responses to tasks, and we can all learn from each other within the community. At the moment, the hashtags are all there, the Facebook group is there, but nobody's yet posted on there. So if you want to be brave and be the first person to post, that would be wonderful. This is the website for it, eltplaybook.wordpress.com, and there is there's an example of the first task from the book there, and that gives you all of the links for the books. So I'm hoping that the book and the community together will help to empower all teachers, not just female teachers, but all teachers, and help to show the professional side of what we're doing. And as Magdalena was mentioning, like, help us all to network with each other and to get the support that we need, even if we don't have it in our environment. If you're in a place without a staff room, if you're working by yourself. So please spread the word, and hopefully the book will be useful to all of you. I will put, I'll give Rob a discount code, or I'll put it into the Facebook group, and that gives you 10% off until the 31st of March. The book should only cost £5, which is about $6.50, I think it is, and €5.50. It's also designed to be affordable to people all over the world as well. So the discount code will give you 10% off until the 31st of March, and I'll put it into the Facebook group so it doesn't get lost in the chat. Thank you, Rob, for organising this, and thank you to everyone. There's lots of inspiring ideas going around. It's brilliant.